It's time for another episode of The Oil Stream with Dustin Nielsen and Tom Gazzola, presented by Popeye's Louisiana Kitchen.
Hello, everyone, and happy Wednesday. Welcome to another episode of The Oil Stream, and shout out to Kenny Holland for giving us lots to talk about this week. It's Nielsen and Gazzola. The Oil Stream is brought to you by Popeye's Louisiana Kitchen with 12 locations, 7 of them right in Edmonton, all of them locally owned and operated, home of the famous Popeye's chicken sandwich. Tommy, how you doing today, buddy?
This is the only 20 minutes of this day where you'll see me wearing a shirt. So I'm doing great.
You're like one of my kids. My kids have been rolling around in their underwear for 2 straight days. They just love it.
I saw Marshall had the beer lineup yesterday. That was awesome. And that looks like a young Tom Gazzola, I'll be honest with you.
All right, it's Nielsen and Gazzola with you. We've got obviously lots to get to. Let's dive into the big one. The Ryan Nugent-Hopkins contract breaks on Tuesday morning, and it was 8 years, 41 mil, 5.125 per. Both Nugent-Hopkins and Ken Holland chatting with the media about the deal. There's a no movement clause in there. Tommy, when we wrapped up the season, did you think this is the way it would go? Max term for the Nuge, but at a significant haircut to what he's been making for the last 6 years?
Easy answer. Absolutely not, Dusty. I thought we'd be looking at like a 4 to 5 year deal, somewhere in the 6 to 6.5. Outrage among the fan base, as we've seen with the Devon Shore signing, and then subsequently when I put out the tweet about the uniforms and there was outrage there. I assumed that that's the road we were going down with Nugent-Hopkins. We knew he was the priority, and we knew that if he were to go to market and not wind up back in Edmonton, there were many holes to fill in many different departments on this team. But to see them go 8 years, NMC, with a 5.1 something mil cap hit for those 8, I did not see that coming. Obviously, Dusty, there was some give and take there, and clearly the willingness on both sides to keep Ryan Nugent-Hopkins as an Oiler was prevalent. Yeah,
definitely. And I think people, now there was a little bit of a downturn from the analytics community on Nuge this year, obviously for his 5-on-5 production, and it's justified. Mm-hmm. But for the most part, people absolutely love Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. Then he goes in, sits down, and is like, my number one priority is to stay with the Edmonton Oilers for the majority of my career. This is a guy who's literally been through the shit here for the last 10 years and just signed on for 8 more. Like, when it's all said and done, he's probably going to have the all-time games played record. He's going to be the longest-serving Oiler at 18 years if he sticks it out through the contract. Like, if Oilers fans needed another reason to absolutely love Ryan Nugent-Hopkins here, Tommy, they got one.
The only other guy to ever play over 1,000 games for the Edmonton Oilers is Kevin Lowe. And Ryan Nugent-Hopkins could be that guy to bookend his career as an Oiler, which would be very rare. And Speck pointed it out. It's true. It's not often that very good NHL players to elite level NHL players want to stay in Edmonton. Here's a guy who wants to stay in Edmonton. And Dusty, like, it'll be neat to see him start to climb the ladder when it comes to all times in points, all-time games played, all that stuff, because there really hasn't been anyone do that as an Edmonton Oiler, especially at forward. So that'll be really neat. The other thing, too, is I was impressed. Like, I had heard that initial ask from the Nugent-Hopkins camp was somewhere around $8 million. Obviously, there had to be a little bit of give and take on both sides. Would have been a shorter term. And the fact that they grinded this out, as was described in social media, and that the willingness and that idea of being an Edmonton Oiler from start to finish might be coming to fruition. Because when I heard those numbers a couple months ago, I'm like, not a chance that's ever happening.
Yeah.
And obviously there was some back and forth, and they found middle ground, which is impressive. And now we watch this kind of play out here.
I think the majority of the reaction has been pretty good to this. There's been a few people who are like, oh, I hate the 7 and 8 years of this deal. Like, why does a guy of Nuge's caliber get the max term? But Tommy, what do you think we're talking about in years 6, 7, and 8 of this deal for Ryan Nugent-Hopkins? What type of player will they have at 5.1 mil when he's 34, 35, 36?
Yeah, we're probably the way it goes in this day and age in the National Hockey League and where it's going, we're talking about a slower forward. We're talking about a penalty killer. We're talking about a guy who might be on the second power play unit. But by then, Dusty, the cap will go up. It's not going to go up, talking to some people, as quickly as was initially anticipated after COVID hit. So it sounds like the flat cap might stick around for a few more years than initially anticipated. But by then, it'll have gone up or should be going up. And you would imagine or hope that there's so much good that Nugent Hopkins at that point had done as a member of the Edmonton Oilers that Oiler fans, the outrage is dissipated. And they go, yeah, we're paying this guy $5.1 million for his cap hit. But look what he did before he got to that advanced stage in his career when it came to his age. So if they're talking about Stanley Cups and the good years and stuff like that, Dusty, I think that 5.1 cap hit by age 34, 35, 36, Oiler fans might actually go, it was worth it.
Yeah, if Nugent Hopkins can help McDavid and Draisaitl deliver a Stanley Cup, nobody will say a peep about the final 3 years of that deal because he would have a ring, which I think would be huge for Ryan Nugent Hopkins. And I mean, on top of it all, even if they're paying him $5.1 million and he's their third line center, a veteran guy on that third line, still getting some power play time and penalty killing for years 16, 17, and 18 of his career, which is just phenomenal. I mean, I still think you're in a pretty good spot. By then, I mean, hopefully Holloway's 6 years into his career and you've drafted some other guys who are taking those top 6 spots. And you might actually be in a spot where you get to a trade deadline and the team's sitting there going like Montreal, God, we'd love to add an Eric Stahl type in the bottom 6. Well, you got 15-year Ryan Nugent Hopkins just sitting there anchoring your bottom 6 for the final 3 years. So I don't see, I mean, as long as injuries don't hit him significantly here along the way, I like the deal, man. I thought it was job well done on all sides.
Dusty, here's the other thing is, like, we generally tend to look on the worst case scenario side of things. What if he's producing like a Joe Pavelski even at that age? I'm not saying it's entirely possible, but it's not like Joe Pavelski is this blazer down the ice and has this amazing speed. Yep. He just has a knack for scoring. He has a knack for tipping pucks. He has a knack for making the right plays, being responsible enough in his own zone that he's still a very effective player, even though he's in his mid to, getting closer to his late 30s with the Dallas Stars. And if Nugent Hopkins, who isn't very fast, but uses that cerebral style of game, can kind of modify it as he gets older, and that'll be A-okay. I think that would be a tremendous scenario. So I think it's fair to look on the bright side too and say, hey, this could happen as well. Likely this is what's going to happen.
All right, so Ken Holland takes care of a big piece of work here for his offseason, and I really like the fact that he's 50% way if he can get Larson done, and we'll get to that in a second. 50% way to get two of the big pieces taken care of here prior to free agents, so he can roll in to, if he needs to buy somebody out, he knows that they have to get that done now because they've got Nugent Hopkins in place. You get him for $5.125, great deal. What's next for Ken Holland, Tommy? What do you think is next on his to-do list? He checks off Nuge and he goes, okay, now I'm coming for you.
Yeah, I think, it's right to assume that he wants to get Larson done. And now, hearing some rumblings that maybe Larson wants to see what the market might be like for him. And that's totally understandable. He's the same age as Nugent Hopkins, same scenario. Maybe he could get a little bit more money. He's going to maybe play with the idea that it might be worth it to take a look at least. But you would think that logically getting that second piece of the puzzle wrapped up, bringing your own guy back who made it abundantly clear in his end of season press conference that he wants to stay as an Oiler. Maybe they can find that common ground. And it sounds like, Larson might need to take a haircut as well. But Dusty, after that, when we start getting to free agency, now is the time to see what Ken Holland can do when it comes to filling that need at the left wing top 6 position, whether it's the first or second line. You got Nugent Hopkins. Now you need another impact left winger. That is abundantly clear as well. They couldn't do it in the postseason without that other left winger. Cahoon couldn't fit the bill. Ennis wasn't enough. So now let's go see what Ken Holland does. Does he go big game hunting? Does he go after Zach Hyman? Does he go after Taylor Hall? Does he make it appealing to one of those guys and gets them to come over to Edmonton? Those are the guys that I'm hearing maybe targeted. Of course, there's others, the Tatars, the Schwartzes. Can't rule any of those names out and leave them out of the realm of possibility. But I think that's the next focus. And if the Larson thing falls through, a lot of work to be left on that blue line. Yeah.
Two things that I want to get to coming out of there. I mean, Adam Larson, assuming Tyson Barrie prices himself out and heads somewhere else, if you don't get Adam Larson done, buddy, all of a sudden you're in a lot of trouble on that right side with just Bear and Bouchard. Like you cannot go into the season, I don't think, with Bear, Bouchard, and a Slater Cuckoo type on the right side. Like you just can't do that.
It doesn't work. It doesn't work. And let's see what he can do with the money he's got left over, Dusty. The other thing too is, I made the plea for Stalock, and it doesn't look like that might actually come to fruition. And they will be looking for another goaltender to help out Mike Smith when that gets done as well. And then the other thing too is I'm hearing some rumblings that they're trying to find a way to move on, obviously, from Mikko Koskinen and James Neal, and do it in a way that is economically viable. The buyout thing isn't ideal for both scenarios. Easier for Koskinen, but I'm assuming and hearing that they probably want to go and find another suitor for either one of those guys.
So would you rank those options as eat some cap, trade them, keep them, and then buyout? Or would buyout still be more likely than keeping them?
I still like the idea of buying out Koskinen if there's nothing there in terms of a trade. I think the Neal one would be a hindrance. It would really hinder you for a longer period of time. And that's something that this team is just coming out of, is years paying for guys who play for other teams. And they're going to keep paying for Lucic to play for the Flames. They're going to keep paying for Andre Sekera to play for the Dallas Stars or whoever he ends up signing with, if it's even anybody. Like, they just finished paying Benoit Pouliot to not play for them for a fourth straight year. You can't do that. Like, you got to maximize your revenue or your cap and your money, and paying guys to not play or to play for other teams is ridiculous. And I think they're trying to avoid that at all costs, which is the smart play.
You mentioned a few of those free agents there, Hyman, Hall. The one you mentioned that I know people don't really like, and especially if basically played his way out of the playoffs here in Thomas Tatar, but he's always produced 5-on-5. Kenny Holland's familiar with him. And I wonder if Tatar would be looking for like a career salvaging 1 year show me deal at $2 million to get his shit together again and move forward. Like, I don't think that's the ideal fit, but that's one guy who I could see willing to sacrifice any sort of term and any sort of $4 or $5 million just to say, put me in a spot where I can do a little bit of damage offensively and maybe pull a Tyson Barrie here in the Oilers. I don't love him, but I'm wondering about that. I wonder if there's something there.
You would have to think that all the options and avenues need to be open. And like I said, if Ken Holland and the staff goes big game hunting and plan A doesn't work out, they don't get any of these big name free agents, a Coleman, I'll throw his name into the mix too, then you got to go to plan B. You can't not have a plan B. Otherwise, you're just doing your entire organization a disservice. And if Thomas Tatar is your plan B, I think you go, okay, for a year and at a reasonable price, this guy is a 20-goal scorer. Most of his offensive damage, like you said, is done at 5-on-5. What does this Oilers team need? Offensive production, 5-on-5. He can fit that need, fly under the radar. It's a microscope here, but not as intense as the one that you get in Montreal. And he's put up with the stuff in Montreal for a few years and done it reasonably well. The stuff with the not playing in the playoffs, this is two teams, Dusty, now that he's been a healthy scratch in the postseason. Yeah. The Golden Knights didn't use him in the playoffs either a few years ago when they had him. That's a red flag.
I wouldn't touch him at any sort of anything close to any sort of market value. But if it's, I don't like if you can say, hey, man, we'll give you 1.75 and a little bit of time with McDavid at some point. That way, if you get to the playoffs and you need to bury him again, then who cares at that point? Like, if it can be at a deal where there's very limited risk and it's not your only option that you're doing, like, I don't mind the scenario where they actually go out and get one of those top guys and then also a little sprinkle on Tatar to restart his career. I'd be okay with them I'm taking a chance on that. So we'll see how it plays out. But I decided post Nuge signing to drop another projected lineup here on Twitter, Tommy. So I'm gonna give it to you. And tell me one thing you like about it, one thing you don't like about it. I think people think when I post these on Twitter that that I love them, and I don't. I mean, I'm just sitting here trying to show how much money they have to still make changes to this line. Now, this does include the 2 buyouts, so it's a little bit more flexibility there. But this is what I put together post-Nuge signing. So I've got McDavid, Puljujarvi with Zach Hyman at 5.15. Nuge, Draisaitl, and Blake Coleman at 3.6. Archibald and Yamamoto flanking one of your guys in Eric Holla, who wins faceoffs on the regular. And then McLeod, my bottom 5 forwards that you would kind of sort of just rotate in there would be McLeod, Benson, Cassian, Shore, and future Edmonton Oiler Luke Glendening on a $1.2 million deal. Like, just announce it already, Holland. Announce Luke Glendening. And then on the blue line, Nurse with Bear, Alexiak, Larson, bringing back Slater Cuckoo with Bouchard, and then Ice Keeper Willie Lagesson and Chris Russell. Freddie Anderson at 4.2 between the pipes with Mike Smith at $2 million. So there's a few things I don't like about it, but where do you come on? What do you like? What do you don't like?
I like the fact that you're able to get Hyman, Coleman, and especially Holla. I mean, that lineup is pretty solid. I think you could say that's more legitimate depth, absolutely. Alexiak in your second pair, now that it's sounding like Oscar Klefbom is not likely to be returning. I know we're supposed to hear in the next couple of weeks, maybe he's going to get an indicator out to Ken Holland, let him know where he stands. But there's been some rumors kind of confirming what you and I talked about last offseason, that he was considering potentially retiring. That's pretty good. Freddie Anderson and Mike Smith between the pipes for you. I
don't even know if Freddie Anderson costs you 4.2, buddy. Like, I wonder, like, what's the market like for goaltenders this offseason? Like, Grubauer's going to be at the top of it. Raska's going to stay where he is. Yeah. And then after that, it's Drieger and some of these other guys like Euro Halak, like Olmark. You really want to. So I don't think like Anderson might even come in the 3s. Somebody today said he might have to settle for something in the 2s after the year he had. I still think he's a pretty good goalie. And if you team him up with Mike Smith, I think that's a pretty good pair between the pipes for $6 million, buddy.
Dusty, I think that's a pretty good lineup. If you're able to finagle all of that, my goodness, you are competing in a pretty weak Pacific Division for top spot, I think, if you're at that point.
The one thing I don't like, or at least it concerns me a little bit, is still that right side. And I know it might be the most likely of right sides right now with Bear, Bouchard, and Larson. But I'm a little hesitant on that. Like, I think that's a lot of heavy lifting for Adam Larson. So we'll see what happens. Let me ask you this, because when I was putting this list together, part of me wanted to put in a trade, because we've both talked about on the oil stream here that we think there will be some sort of trade this offseason to address one of these other holes.
Yep.
Do you think Ethan Bear is one of the more likely guys to be traded? Like, or is it just draft picks? Or because I wonder if they were to move Bear for their third line center, a good young third line center, similar age, similar development path of Ethan Bear, and then, dare I say it, bring back Tyson Barrie with Larson and Bouchard. I'm trying to figure out what the piece is that would get moved in this trade that we expect to see.
Ethan Bear is appealing to a lot of teams. He has a lot of potential, a lot of upside, and he's still developing. So he could get you something really respectable back. And he could help meet a need somewhere else on the roster. Now, that's putting a lot of eggs into the Evan Bouchard basket, but it sounds like and it seems like the Oilers are kind of willing to go that route. And you look at it, and this has kind of been brought up during the postseason, is look how big these blue lines are. Not only are these blue lines big, but they're mobile and they move the puck well. And Ethan Bear is 5'11", 200 pounds.
Gets around.
Evan Bouchard, he does get around. He brings so much to the table. But if you're going to, go into that mindset and say, hey, we need our blue line to be bigger, it's Evan Bouchard. And if you feel he skates well enough, can handle the rough stuff well enough, then you might be willing to part with Ethan Bear. Now, is that scenario likely? Potentially. Do the Oilers want to keep Ethan Bear? Yeah, definitely. But you got to give up something to get something.
That's the thing, right? Like, we're not sitting here running Bear out of town. Yeah. I'm just looking at, like, what can you move of significance to address one of these other needs? And of course, you'd have to have a plan to replace Bear on the right side. Like I said, I mean, if they really like Barry and they want to bring Barry back and run Bouchard and Larson, then if you have to clear a path for Bouchard, then the only option there would be to trade Bear. And we think he has some value that could turn things around. So I don't know what else. I mean, outside of draft picks, that they would move to address some of these other spots. So,
Dusty, the other thing too is you could flip Bouchard. Like, if you think Bear is your guy,
you're
right?
done here, Tommy. You're done here.
I'm just saying, this is hypothetical. Like, if you need to move one of these high-end potential defensemen, it could be Bear or it could be Bouchard, depending on what you get back. But, you just kind of look at things and how they potentially could work out, and you go, well, if they need to get bigger and stay mobile with offensive ability, that sounds a lot like Evan Bouchard. Who knows if they even get to that point? We're just going hypothetical here. We're not running anyone out of town. We like all those guys.
And in the end, it's probably going to be Bear, Bouchard, and Larson next year on the right side. And you just have to hope that Bear plays more like he did 2 years ago than last year, and Bouchard takes a step when given an opportunity. All right, let's get to your Ken Morrison Remax question of the day. Visit Ken at kenrmorrison.com. He's been a realtor for 20 years. You can give him a call, 780-993-4815. The market is red hot. You might as well dabble in it with Ken Morrison, kenrmorrison.com. Tommy Gazzola, your Ken Morrison Remax question of the day is this: Ryan Nugent-Hopkins will hit 70 points at least once over the next 8 years, which would set his career high.
Yes, I'll say he does it. He's 28 years old. I think he does it either this upcoming season or the following season. And man, the guys he's going to be playing with are screaming red hot right now, and he's got to take advantage of that. He had a down year. He recognizes that. The contract stuff's out of the way. COVID looks like we're coming out of it. That's out of the way. That's messed up a lot of people more than we thought it would behind the scenes too. I think he's able to do it, Dusty. He was going to do it 2 seasons ago, and he's more than capable, Dusty. So I will say yes, he gets it done either this upcoming season or the following season.
They've always been a huge Nuge homer. 61 and 65, though, before the COVID season got cut short, though. So he was on pace to do it there as well. I'm with you. I think he'll get 70 here at one point over the next 2 or 3 seasons, and probably settle in as like a 55-point guy after that for the Edmonton Oilers. So that is your Ken Morrison Remax question of the day. Before we wrap up here today, last night, Connor McDavid taking home the Ted Lindsay and unanimously taking home the Hart Trophy. I didn't think the professional hockey writers would do it. I'm wondering if there was some direction from the top saying, we gotta, because it's a bad look if we don't. But that's a pretty nice accomplishment for Connor McDavid, Tommy.
Absolutely well-deserved. And kudos to the writers and the association for getting it right. And I think the backup, as always, or even the forerunner, could be the fact that his peers voted him as the best player in the game this past season. And I think that just puts a stamp on it, and you can't deny it. He is the best player, especially, God bless Nathan McKinnon. God bless Austin Matthews, Pasternak.
Kucherov, you have to say Kucherov right now.
Kucherov, what an amazing run he's on in the postseason, matching a Gretzky type numbers in terms of what he's been able to do in the postseason the last couple of years. But this just solidifies when the players that he plays against say he's the best player in the world, best player this past season, and then the voters also give it to him. He's the best player in the world. Enough said. Close the book. Let's move on to next year. Connor McDavid is the best player in the world. Unanimous
MVP, first to do it since Wayne Gretzky in the early 80s, almost 40 years. So it was that spectacular of season. Congratulations to Connor McDavid, who watches the Oil Stream on a regular basis because he's a huge fan of Popeyes.
And Ken Morrison Remax. Like, he doesn't care about us. He doesn't even want to see our faces. He's just like, what's the question of the day and what do we got for deals at Popeye?
He's going to make sure Nuge hits 70 next year. We'll get that taken care of. Right. So our answer was correct today. All right, that's going to do it for another episode of the Oil Stream. Obviously, lots to discuss here as Kenny Holland's offseason gets cranked up a notch. I absolutely love it. Once again, huge thank you to a presenting sponsor, Popeye's Louisiana Kitchen, DoorDash, Skip the Dishes, Uber Eats. You can eat in. You go through the drive-thru. Lots of ways to get your hands on that chicken sandwich and one of the new menu items that's coming up here right away. And, of course, Ken Morrison for hopping on board here with the question of the day as well. Tommy, I'll talk to you in a couple of days here, bud.
Can't wait, Dusty. Stay cool.